So our final thing will be basically to kind of look at common emotional needs and support of sunflower patients. And this will be by our two social workers who spend a lot of time. Leigh Horne-Mebel, who also has worked with us for 20 years, and Emma Bauman, who's Barrows now, who's been with us for several years, are going to talk to us about that aspect of sunflower syndrome.
Testing, okay. So hi, I'm Leigh Horne-Mebel, and I'm a clinical social worker with the Pediatric Epilepsy Program and also with the Herscott Center here at Mass General.
And hi, everyone. I'm Emma Barrows. I am the social worker for the Pediatric Epilepsy Program. So we're really excited to see you guys all here today. We're actually going to do a little bit of a different type of presentation where we're going to sit and have a conversation with each other, but really with you guys about the common supports and emotional needs of children with sunflower syndrome. Okay, so just to start us off, one of the first questions that we often get is, what does a medical social worker do? So what do we do on a daily basis? So actually, this is a phrase that I stole from Leigh herself, but typically when I describe what we do, I describe it as that we wear a lot of hats, because we do a lot of things on a daily basis. So one of the things that we do is we provide counseling and guidance, whether that's to parents, whether that's individual therapy to our patients, their siblings at times, or family. So that's a big thing that we do. Another thing that we do is provide support groups, which we're really going to fixate on a little bit later when we talk about some of the options that we have for our sunflower kids, which I'm excited to talk about. We also refer to community services. So there are families that will come to us who need support with things like housing or finances. Sometimes we can refer to different services like Make-A-Wish or to the Epilepsy Foundation. So there's a lot of really fantastic things out there that families don't know about, and that's really what we're here for. We also help with school services. So I know it's been mentioned a couple times of getting IEP or 504 services for students at school. And so Leigh's going to talk about that shortly. I know that Wing also talked about this, but a big part of what we do is we help with dietary therapy. It can be a really difficult transition, and we want to make sure that we're setting you guys up for success from the very beginning. And lastly, another big thing that we do is we help with anything related to crises. So if there's any safety concerns in the home or safety concerns for the child, whether it's at home or at school, that's a big thing that we do as well. So Leigh, do you want to tell us a little bit about how to get accommodations at school?
Sure. So here in the United States, there are federal laws to protect all children who need special education. The laws were enacted in the 70s, and you might know of them as IDEA, which stands for Individualized Disabilities with Education Act, something you think about all the time and then you can't say it. And so this protects and helps to offer special education services to all children who might have a physical disability, an intellectual disability, or may need special accommodations with things such as an accessible setting so that they can learn. Dr. Teal spoke about in her talk about how just a little over 50% of our children, according to our study, require any educational assistance. So I imagine that this is predominantly something called a 504 plan. So children can qualify for two things: individualized educational plans or 504 plans. And a lot of the times our children, what they need is just simply accommodations with their particular classroom setting, which would be like blinds that cover a classroom that maybe faces the sun, particularly in the morning or the afternoon. So things like that. Or tinted lighting in a room. So when we think about accessible settings, those are the kinds of things we think about. When you are concerned that your child might need academic supports or accommodations at school, there are two things you can do. Talk to your pediatrician, who can do some minor testing and refer your child, but also you're going to want to talk to your child's teachers. And what will follow from that is testing, evaluation. If your child does qualify for accommodations, you'll work with the school to have those provided, and there will be there's a systematic monitoring through the school system to make sure that those accommodations and supplements and plans and everything are in place. So there are a lot of things to protect your child. The main thing probably to share with you today is that we have from our school advocate, our program school advocate, whose name is Gretchen Timmel. She presented to the educators Teaching Children with Epilepsy conference last fall, a talk that was just incredible and gives all the details about this and the processes for helping support your child to get accommodations. So that presentation is on our YouTube channel, and I can't say enough about how thorough and how good that talk is. So you might want to look at that.
Thanks, Leigh. I know that accommodations at school is not a brief conversation, so I appreciate summarizing as best you can, because I know we have limited time today. So if you guys, again, if you have questions later too, you can always ask us. So kind of building off of that, another big question that we get about is bullying. We hear a lot about how kids with sunflower syndrome can be bullied. And so typically what we recommend is the first thing to do is to stay calm. And I know that that's really hard. But as calm as you can be, the safer place you're creating for your child to be able to talk to you, because the next step is really to acquire as much information as you can, either from your child, but also from wherever the bullying is taking place. So whether that's school or in the community, so you want to get as much information as you can from both of them. If it's happening at school, one of the biggest things that we recommend is reporting it to the school, right? And I would report it definitely both verbally and in writing. That way there's a paper trail, but also you're doing your due diligence. Unfortunately, at times you may need to also follow up on the complaint as well. And so that would be something too that we recommend. Just a reminder that bullying is against the law in all 50 states. So it's something that if it's happening, make sure that you are setting up your child for success and talking with the location that it's happening, and then providing them any type of emotional support that they need, whether it's a school counselor at school, whether it's just someone that they trust that they can talk to, or an outside therapist as well. So our next question, Leigh, is about supporting siblings of a child with sunflower syndrome with their siblings' new medical diagnosis. So how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, so for those of you who have several children, it's important to talk with your child about or just your own child, but it's important to talk to your child about their diagnosis and to use age-appropriate language when sharing information or talking about their situation. It's important when you do so to not overwhelm them with too much information. And oftentimes what happens is when parents will talk with children, they'll give a little bit of, brief information that they need, and then children will go off. The next day, they'll come back, they'll ask a question about, what mom and dad shared with them yesterday. They'll do, repeatedly, a few days later, come back and have more questions. And that's how children process and understand, difficult situations, and particularly something like this. But it's important to have open communication with your children so that they know they can come and talk with you, that you are a safe person for them to have open discussions with. If you do have other children, it's important to support your children talking with each other. This is really important because it promotes perspective taking of your children. You know, it's important for siblings to think about what it might be like to have sunflower syndrome. They certainly know what it's like to be a sibling of someone with some sunflower syndrome. This also is important because it helps with developing emotional intelligence. And that's part of, you know, their development, children and adolescents' development. So it's really critical. We always want to encourage families to have things to look forward to, and for that to be a lot of the conversation in families, what you're going to do this weekend, you're going out to dinner tonight, you're excited about vacation this summer, you know, all kinds of things to look forward to can be just supportive and encouraging to children. We also encourage families to think about having family meetings, like once a week, once a month, depending on what your needs are. That develops open communication and gets children thinking about feelings, and it gets them comfortable with talking about feelings. We also encourage families, if you can, to have dinner together maybe a couple of times during the week. That's also a great opportunity for you as parents to keep your finger on the barometer of what's happening with your children. And we always want to encourage you to think of it as your family is so much more than just sunflower syndrome.
Just to add to that as well, I know that there are also sibling support groups. So speaking to your child with sunflower syndrome specialist or primary care, or even the Epilepsy Foundation in your area, sometimes they are hosting different sibling support groups as well. I know that Leigh has been instrumental in hosting sibling support groups in the past. So another big question that we get is around college. So your child with sunflower syndrome is off to college, and how do you support them with that? So I'll start off with saying that our team puts on an event called Thrive in College every spring. And so what we do is we separate the parents and the students into respective groups, and we have the prospective students going off to college meet with an experienced student in college with epilepsy, as well as we have the parents who also meet with an experienced parent. And we found it to be a really incredible space for students and parents alike to ask questions, but we also give some of the basic information that I'm about to give to you. So one of the things that we talk about is medication. So it can be really helpful to find some way to help your child keep track of their medication, whether it's through an app or alarms, making sure that they have a system set up in place that also helps them with refills as well. We also think about different things to set up for emergencies. So it can be really helpful to have your child inform their RA or their roommates that they have a seizure disorder, getting a medical bracelet or adding emergency information into their phone, and then also finding some kind of local internist as well. And that brings me to my next point is that there are also a lot of resources on campus. So you can get both academic support, but there's also health centers as well that your child could be able to see a provider there too. It can be really helpful to practice independence going into college. So thinking about when they're 14, 15, 16, helping them already learn how to take medications safely and learn to track their medications, or thinking about what is it like to do schoolwork in an environment that's a little more flexible. And so practicing some of those things earlier on can be helpful. Another thing that we talk about is providing any type of emotional support. We know that transitions can be difficult for all children, but especially for kids with any type of seizure disorder. So whether it's, it'd be helpful for them to talk to someone about it, someone they trust, a school counselor, outside therapist, that can be helpful too. And on that note, we also know that it can be really emotional for parents too. And so, any ways that you guys can take care of yourself if your child's going to transition off to college, and making sure that you guys have support set up for you, whether it's family or just someone to talk to. So again, if you guys are in that process at some point, we do host that event in May, and it's a really good space for students who are going off to college as well as their parents. Okay, so moving on to kind of this next section that we wanted to talk about is really about the two main mental health diagnoses that we see for our children with sunflower syndrome. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about anxiety, and then Leigh will talk about depression, and then we'll talk a little bit about the things that you can do if you're seeing any of these symptoms in your children. So for anxiety, what we commonly see for children with sunflower syndrome is a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. So that's our most common, and that's really just a general excessive worry about present or future events. So typically for generalized anxiety disorder, we see symptoms like difficulty concentrating, fatigue, feelings or worries about impending danger and doom, high blood pressure, sweating, high heart rate. Looking at my list because there's multiple of them that your child might exhibit, some of them and not all of them, but nervous, trembling, restless, tension, sleep disturbances, things like this. So if you start to see any of these things, it could be really helpful to think about, is your child experiencing any type of anxiety? So something that we see for our sunflower syndrome is that we can categorize them into like general types of worries. So we can see worries about academics, so whether that's homework, schoolwork, being able to complete it. We see social anxiety, so thinking about hand waving in public, being bullied, or having to wear sunglasses or a hat and what that feels like to wear that when your peers don't have to. We see generalized anxiety for our sunflower patients, so we're seeing that in worries about independence, being separate from your parents, and having a hand-waving episode, worries about the future, worries about having a diagnosis of sunflower syndrome, or even just adjusting to having that diagnosis if it's a new diagnosis. Lastly, we see specific phobias. So that might be fears about EEGs or lab work or going to the hospital. So those are kind of some of the things that we see. And actually, Leigh and I have both presented on anxiety specifically for sunflower syndrome because, again, it's one of the main mental health diagnoses that we see. So if you need more information, that's a really great place to start, and those are on our YouTube page as well. So Leigh, do you want to share a little bit about depression?
Yeah. Yes. So depression is something that can have far-reaching effects on children if untreated. We always say that untreated childhood or adolescent anxiety becomes adult depression. Well, it also becomes adult anxiety. But undiagnosed and untreated depression can really affect development and also can greatly impact your child's sense of self-efficacy and their self-confidence in themselves and dealing with the world and just growing and developing as you will want them to do. Some of the symptoms to look for depression are a persistent sadness. If you see that over time, I would say, 2 weeks or persistent sadness over at least 2 weeks or longer would be something to really be concerned about and want to look into. If your children are easy to anger, they have problems with sleep, like sleeping too much or having insomnia, which is uncharacteristic of them. If they lose interest in normal activities, if they seem disconnected from their friends or your family, and also, of course, a significant change in their school performance. It's very important to be able to, if you see some symptoms like I've just described, it would be important to talk with other caregivers of your child. That would be teachers, that would be coaches, or people who, the adults who are involved in your child's, say, after school programs, or any place, where your children are have other adults involved in their lives and watching them and being a part of their lives, and can also recognize changes. So it would be important to talk and see if other people are seeing the same things that you're concerned about. If that is the case, that collectively you're all concerned about your child, it would be important to talk to your children about what you're seeing and what you're thinking, and get a sense from them about what's going on, their perspective. They may be really worried about their grades, and getting some additional school supports could take care of things versus, going the route of mental health professionals and that kind of thing. They could be bullied and they haven't shared that with you. So all kinds of things can come up with just talking to your children directly and finding out from their experience what's happening. It will be important to collaborate with other providers so that you can all, collectively support your child. And it may turn out that you decide to consult with a mental health professional. And Emma's going to talk a little bit about how to access professional mental health help.
Yeah, so typically what we recommend is if you decide to seek a mental health professional for your child, it really would be because you're noticing that their anxiety or their depression or other factors of changes to their mental health are significantly impacting their daily living, their daily functioning. So there's a couple different resources. So the first one is a therapist, which is what Leigh and I are. So there's different types of therapists. Really, it's just the different education that they've had. So you'll find licensed independent clinical social workers, which is our title. You'll also find licensed mental health counselors. You'll find psychologists. All of them do varying types of therapy. And so it's just good for you to know that there's different titles when you're going out and looking for a therapist. The other type of resource that you can go to is a psychiatrist. Now, the difference between a psychiatrist and a therapist is that the psychiatrist is more likely going to focus on prescribing medications, things like anti-anxiety medications or antidepressants. And we really recommend seeing a psychiatrist if you notice that your child is not able to access therapy and need more support. So that's typically when we recommend seeing a psychiatrist. So a lot of times we get questions about how to find a therapist and psychiatrist. I know that they can be really tricky to find in some areas and that there are some limited resources. The first thing that we really recommend is calling your child's primary care provider. Usually they have kind of their button on or their finger on different resources in the community. They might even have access to someone at their office that your child can see, potentially on a short-term basis, but even maybe long-term. You can also reach out to your child's specialist. I know with our team, you have access to Leigh and myself, and so that can be really helpful as well. Another thing that we recommend is calling your insurance, and that's a really big one because an important factor here is to make sure that whatever provider your child is set up with, it takes your insurance. We want to make sure that you guys are covered and those costs are part of the insurance package. There are different websites that you can use as well. We recommend ones like Psychology Today. There's also matching services. So in Massachusetts, we have one called William James Interface, and that's someone that you'd get connected with that would help you look through their database of resources and therapists that they can help set you up with. So I know there are different ones like that in different states as well. So if you have questions about that, again, check with insurance and primary care. Those are the two first places that we recommend going to.
Oh, Emma, if I can just add a couple of things. So when Dr. Teal was speaking, this just points out how important addressing anxiety, depression, and any mental health issues are really important for our patients. Dr. Teal pointed out that in our study, respondents said 88% of them said that their symptoms or their sunflower syndrome had greatly impacted their quality of life. She also pointed out that 90% of the respondents said that it had just generally impacted their psychosocial development. I'm not sure what the word was that the study used, but it impacted them psychosocially. So 88% commenting about the impact of quality of mental health issues on the quality of their life, and 90% being impacted psychosocially is tremendously significant. And also, I just want to point out in Chloe's talk, she mentioned how she had accessed mental health services and had spoken with a psychiatrist, had taken a medication, Chloe, I believe you said, and had probably most importantly learned some mindfulness exercises and some ways that she could just take care of herself. So I think that was really significant in Chloe's talk.
That's a great point, Leigh. And so just to add to that, if you're noticing that your child needs supports like the ones that Leigh and I have mentioned, I also have a presentation that's up on our YouTube page that goes into this in even more detail. So Leigh, can you also share with us a little bit about Thrive? Because I know there's some resources through there that can help with mental health too.
Sure. So Thrive is a program that we developed about 8 years ago jointly with our neuropsychologist, Dr. Amy Morgan, who unfortunately has retired, but is still a part of this program. The purpose of our program was to develop opportunities for our children with epilepsy to be able to meet other children with epilepsy and to have an opportunity to participate in groups where we are focused on developing their executive functioning. So it's important to remember that executive functioning is not just an issue for children who have attention deficit disorder, it's a part of human development. So we're focused on increasing and improving and enhancing executive development. We're wanting to increase self-efficacy, children's self-confidence, their opportunity to have social interaction and to develop socially and to have fun. So we've done all kinds of groups through the last 8 years. We've provided karate groups, yoga, expressive dancing. We've had children participate in learning how to use an emotional support dog. We sponsor the Thrive in College night that Emma just spoke with you about. Let's see, I have a little list here. I'm going to use my cheat sheet. And a couple of years ago, we offered rock climbing, which was very exciting. We did that for a few years, which was really, really exciting to see kids become more confident as they, challenge themselves with rock climbing. We also did things like hiking. The main thing is that we've had a really good time with each other. And so Thrive stands for Together, Helping Reach Individual Victories with Epilepsy. And if you would like to learn more about our Thrive program, we would love for you to be in touch with us and participate in our program development. Thrive also sponsors these kinds of programs. So we, provide this conference, the Educators with Epilepsy Conference, the Tuberous Sclerosis Conference. It's endless. So we look for you to get in touch with us if you're interested.
And so I know I had mentioned earlier that another thing that we do is groups. So Thrive is also part of Thrive is that we offer support groups. So when the pandemic started, there was actually a very large sunflower group, and since then we've really noticed and recognized the needs of our patients, and so we've broken down into a middle school group of any age, or of any gender. And so that's been a really incredible thing that we have done for the past year. that has been really fantastic to see. And so hosting the group is myself as a social worker. We have Patricia Bruno, our nurse, Kennedy Keenan, and Shelby, who you also met with or got to see earlier. So we have all been working together on that group. So really the reason that we focused on middle school is because it's such a pivotal time for social emotional development. We've also seen a significant amount of bullying that happens around the middle school age. And so we wanted to offer a group of kids with sunflower syndrome to be able to sit and to provide support for each other. And so it's a big part of our topics. But also we do a bunch of different activities that help to build things like resiliency. So we do mindfulness skills, we've done yoga, we've done a lot of really incredible things. But one of the biggest things that I'm really excited to share with you guys is we have recently written a book. Okay, so I'll hold this up for you. So this is the book that we've been working on. It's called Our Journey with Sunflower Syndrome. And actually a couple of the kids who worked on this book are here today. And so it's been really incredible to share this with them. So the book itself has a couple chapters, mostly about treatments. We talk about, the emotional aspects that come up with the diagnosis of sunflower, coping skills, advocacy. So the kids wrote this book themselves, and I'm going to just put my mic down so I can also show you the drawings. Yeah, that would be great if you want to show the drawings. Just a couple of them. Yeah. So they put a lot into this in the past couple months, and it's been really, really fantastic to see all the work that they have done. So actually, I'm going to see if Wing can share a video of a couple of the kids also talked about what it was like to be in the group, but also what it was like to write the book, and so we wanted to share that with you guys too.
Hi, my name is Herbert. When I first was attending the meetings, I was really nervous and scared because I didn't know anyone. But now, because I was going for a while, I made a lot of friends on Zoom. It is really fun meeting all of your friends in the Zoom sessions and even in person. It is my favorite part is just hanging out with my friends and doing fun activities while we learn about it.
My name's Cassidy Cottle. I live in Marlton, New Jersey, and I feel glad about making this book because I get to share it with the world, and that I feel like that other people feel good that there are more people that have sunflower syndrome.
How did it feel to attend the Sunflower Syndrome support group?
It was very fun and enjoyable, and it helped me realize that I'm not going through this alone.
How did it feel to create this book with your peers?
It was very fun, and I'm very happy that we'll get to help other people going through sunflower syndrome know what's going on.
So they described it better than I ever could. But Macy's point is exactly what the purpose of this group is, or this book is now, and it is available for you guys to purchase and use for your kids as well if they want to share it with people in their community. But the purpose of it really is to educate, and really is for our kids with sunflower to feel like they have something that they have available to them that they can share with anyone that they want. So that's all we had today. I know that we have limited time, so if you have any questions, you are welcome to come and find us. We're happy to answer any questions that you guys have. And as I mentioned, the book is available if you guys are interested in it. There's a fun little section at the end that just talks about, there's a space for the kids who buy it to also add their own journey into the story. All right. Yeah.
Add your journey.
Yes. All right, thank you, everyone.
So that's the end of our formal program here today. And again, I'd really like to thank you guys for coming, and I think we're going to enjoy the rest of the afternoon spending time together. I think we have the space till like 4:30 and lots of activities, and I've been told by lots of parents that that's what really matters to them, and the kids tell us that too. So I'd like to thank all of you for coming. I know many of you traveled afar, it's a busy time of summer, school getting ready to start, and we really appreciate it. I really need to thank my group. I'm pretty proud of everything. Sorry. This is the first time this has happened. It's a lot of work to put on these conferences, and it's having people that are already working really hard, spending a whole Saturday here, so I appreciate it. I really appreciate Chloe coming. That was really powerful. And I'd really like to thank Robin Bluestein, who runs Thrive, and all the people that worked with Thrive. Also, really need to thank Scott for being here to help with this. It's going to be able to be available for lots of people, lots of places. And a special thanks also to the Epilepsy Foundation New England for supplying many volunteers to be here with us today. I'm wicked excited about this book and kind of hope that you guys will enjoy it. And I'd also like to thank all of you again for all of your support you have given us in the past, because it's really enabled us to be able to do this work. All of this is really being done with the support of our families with sunflower syndrome. So if you'd like to further support what we do, that would also be greatly appreciated. But enjoy lunch. And Robin did give me some, I can do this, no problems. So the fundraiser books were created by the Sunflower Children's Group and Journey with Sunflower Syndrome, so those will be available for purchase out there. And then Wing, we do have people with dietary, either gluten-free or ketogenic dietary needs, so Wing will be helping serve those at the registration table. And then lunch will be until about 1:30, and then we're going to split up the kids, and any teen that would like to get together is going to meet in this smaller room here, and then the activity room will be available for kids. But again, thank you guys very, very much for coming. We really loved it. Thank you.